Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another chapter of Experiencer Interviews. And today we have with us Justin Bush from the US, coming back for a part two. Born in Lower Delaware and author of the book Violence Will Not Be Tolerated, an Alien Abduction Story. Alien Abductee Justin Bush shares with us his lifelong encounters with extraterrestrial beings such as greys, tall whites, and insectoids. He takes us deep into the terrifying and profound moments that shaped his life, including being abducted with his father and having objects implanted into his body. Justin questions whether he is an unknowing participant in a multi-generational genetic or testing program orchestrated by the Greys. His experiences reveal disturbing patterns and possibly a structured agenda. So Justin, thank you so much for coming on for part two.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So last time we finished off the interview by talking about different types of greys that you saw, how they looked, how they moved, and that you were taken by a military covert group. We have quite a few subjects that we didn't get into last time, so I'm hoping we could get into them today. In 1997, you shared with me a Tic Tac interception story. What's that about?
Yeah, so that was happened at my father's house in Lewis Beach, Delaware. My brother was outside. I think I was playing basketball, and my aunt. It's my father's house. My aunts and my grandfathers all connected together, and then we had like cousins and things. So this whole area were like my family's homes in one kind of group, and my aunt had a basketball court, and I was playing basketball. It was getting probably like eight something at night, um, and it wasn't dark. The sun was still up, but it was getting close to sundown. And I was playing, and I looked around for my brother, and I saw him standing in my father's yard. There's a hill on the front lawn, and he's just staring like straight up in the sky. And it was weird. Like he was almost frozen, just looking, not moving. So I walked across the yard towards him, and then when I got about a foot away from him, he said, he said, like, look, what's that? Or something like that. He lifted his hand up and said, what's that? And so I looked up, and I saw it. It was extremely high in the atmosphere. I mean, it's probably at least 30,000 feet. Like where we live, we have really normal air traffic from, because we live on right on the East Coast. So we're like a mile away from the beach, and we get all this air traffic from Florida all the way up to New York, and it's constant. So this thing, it was a silver tube shaped object. It was really high up. So I take one look at it, and I just go, oh, it's a plane. And because you know how like when a plane is really high, you sometimes you can't see the wings. So I was just like, oh, it's probably a plane. And I went and looked at him, and he didn't look away. He still was staring at the sky. And he said, no, it's moving funny. And so I looked back, and then I couldn't find it. I was like, where'd it go? Like a plane couldn't like couldn't go anywhere. So I looked back, and it was gone. And then all of a sudden I saw it appear like this. And it looked like it was the easiest way to explain it is when it would disappear, it looked like it would close like that, and then when it appeared, it looked almost like it opened up. So once it appeared, I was like, "Whoa, where did it come from?" Like there was no streak or nothing. So this thing appears, and then it disappears and appears over here, and it keeps doing this. Like it's here, and then it's doing this, but it's doing it, you know, a good distance away from itself. So it would jump, like let's say it would increase altitude 1,000 feet, and then maybe move, 2,000 feet this way, and then it would decrease altitude 2,000 feet and then move over here. So if you tracked it with your finger, right? If you put your finger where it was like jumping like this, kind of just boom, 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 maybe once a second, boom, 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 boom. And so we watched this for several minutes. This thing is just appearing and disappearing. Overall, it's descending. It's not doing it all at once. It's doing this weird jump around thing. Like maybe it might jump further away from us, and then it jumps back towards us. It might jump up in altitude, then it jumps back down. So overall, if you pick a piece of sky where it started out, let's say 30,000 feet, it was overall descending and getting closer, but not all it in one piece. And then it did one final jump to probably less than 1,000 feet off the ground. I mean, I'm trying to think. We have trees out there that are probably 80 feet tall. This thing probably was, I don't know, maybe no more than 500 feet, I'm guessing. So it does this last jump, boom, and then it just comes down um, like perfectly horizontally, not like an airplane where it kind of angles, but it just came down like this perfectly horizontally. It flew across the field. It flew over to some trees, and it was as if it was like on a fishing line where it just perfectly flew at this perfect straight line, went over to this tree, and just hovered several feet above the tree. So it's probably, I don't know, 70, 80 feet off the ground, I'm guessing. Um, so I watched this, and now it's hovering. And all of a sudden, for some reason, my brother just snaps and goes, "Oh my God, you got to go get dad." So I turned and ran inside, and I jumped up the steps. I ripped the door open. I yelled for my father. He didn't know what I said. I just was screaming at him. I was like, "Quick about it, you got to come out here," you know? And he just said, "What?" And I slammed the door and jumped down the steps. As soon as my feet hit the ground, this helicopter came. I mean, we're talking, I don't know, 50 feet off the ground, 60 feet off the ground. Um, it flew so low. I mean, it's the lowest helicopter I've ever seen that wasn't like taking off or landing. So this thing flew directly over our house, directly over my grandfather's garage. I was almost directly underneath of it. It was just slightly off a little bit to my right. It was a Black Hawk helicopter. It had a one of the domes on the front of it to record, um, one of the 360 cameras, like the FLIR domes. Um, it, I guess that's it. I mean, it had no insignia, no nothing, no numbers, no tail numbers, just a black helicopter. It flew over my grandfather's garage. I yelled for my father. He didn't know what I said, but he immediately heard the helicopter fly over the house. So he came out. I ran back to my brother. When I got to the end of the driveway, the craft started to very slowly move, maybe like a mile or 2 miles an hour, just down the tree line, just flying right above the trees. This is probably where it was probably like maybe 600 to 800 yards away. But as it flew, it was getting closer. It probably got like 250, 300 yards away. This was not a small object. It was as big as the helicopter. So even at, just if you want a kind of an idea of the size, just park a school bus, at the end of, the parking lot at 300 yards away. It's not like you're missing it. It's a substantial size. So anyway, it very slowly starts flying. The helicopter attempted to intercept. So it flew straight across the field and allowed the craft to move in front of it. And then it banked hard right, and then it banked hard left, and then leveled out behind it. And then it proceeded to chase the craft like this. Very close. I mean, they were feet apart. Like the front and the tail of the helicopter and the craft were feet apart. So it's chasing it down the tree line now. When the helicopter got behind it, it instantaneously accelerated to the exact same speed the helicopter was flying. So it was almost like, let's say the helicopter is going 100 miles an hour. It's like it pressed a button and immediately kept a perfect distance between the two. Like it just chose, like maybe it measured the speed of the helicopter and just it went from 1 mile an hour to whatever, 100. So it's coming down. It's above these trees. At one point, it's almost like the craft tried to shake the helicopter. The craft dipped down real fast. The helicopter dipped down, and then it came back up like that. It was almost like it was trying to shake it or maybe test it or something, like test the pilot or something. At that point, they had a beam that came out of the front of the helicopter, right? So they're headed, there's a road with power lines, right? And they're headed, let's say 100 miles an hour straight at these power lines. It did that dip, came up, and then right before the craft ran into the power lines, like it was just, I don't know how many feet away, but pretty close, and it was moving pretty fast. The helicopter shot this beam out that we just assumed was maybe like a spotlight or something. We don't know, but it came out of the nose of the helicopter. And it was just getting dark enough. Like the sun was not quite down, but it had gone down enough where it was like the sky started to be like medium dark. Like not it wasn't invisible. There was still some sun, but it was just getting, it was right there at twilight. This whole thing started several minutes before. The sun was up, you could see everything. And as it's transpiring, the sun's going down. So anyway, this craft, the helicopter shoots this light beam, and this thing disappears the way it had before. So it disappears from here and then just reappears up here. And so my dad had not seen it do this. So when my dad came outside, all he saw it do was hover and then very slowly fly and then increase speed and kind of dive. He didn't know that this thing could fly like that. Like he had not seen it disappear from one place and reappear. So this thing disappeared maybe, I'm guessing 60 feet off the ground, maybe less. Disappeared from 60 feet and it reappeared at least the same altitude we first saw it. So we're talking miles. This thing jumped in a fraction of a second, several miles. And the only reason we could see it is because we were far enough back that we had perspective. Like if we were closer, it would have, let's say it disappeared from in front of us and reappeared up here, we would have never known, like because it just wasn't in our field of vision. My father didn't realize where it went. So it disappeared and reappeared. He didn't see it. So he was like, holy cow, where'd it go? And I immediately pointed at it and I was like, it's up there. He looked up and went, holy smokes, how did it get up there so fast? And the helicopter almost ran into the power lines. Like this craft waited so long to do this maneuver that the helicopter like barely was able to pull up and not wrap itself up in the power lines. Like I said, my dad even yelled out, he said, holy smokes, it's going to crash. Like he thought it was going to crash. They pulled up so sharp and they just barely cleared those power lines. And then they did something that makes me think that they were tracking this craft. So if you're in the helicopter, you're a few feet away and it does this, there's no way you know where it went, right? We're talking thousands of feet away, thousands of feet in altitude, and maybe even like a mile north it was flying from south to north, maybe even like a mile north of us in like that. No streak, no nothing. So the helicopter pulls up, it kind of reorients itself, points at where the craft is. The craft is now just very slowly rising up, like it's going to space, right? Real slow. So it did one jump and now it's just slowly rising up. The helicopter pointed its nose and attempted to gain altitude on it for we watched it for another 5 or so minutes. The sun went down as the helicopter was trying to gain altitude. And then the helicopter had no lights on. It turned on its outside lights once the sun went down. So it had no blinking lights or anything until the sun went down, it turned them on. So we watched it it started to disappear into the darkness, and then it turned its lights on right before like the sun went fully down. It probably took over 5 minutes, and it didn't even make it halfway to where that thing disappeared in a second. Like it didn't even make it halfway in altitude and distance after 5 minutes of trying to go up. Anyway, so the helicopter, my dad was like, okay, it's time to go. We need to get out of here. And because he doesn't like UFOs. Anytime there's some UFO stuff, he's like, okay, time to leave. We got to get out of here. He's had his own experiences, so he doesn't like it. But when it's happening, it's hard to, look away. Like, you know what I mean? You're like, oh my gosh, what's going on? And then he was just like, let's get out of here. It's dark outside. I don't know if that thing's coming back. I don't know what that thing is. Let's go to safety. So he was like, okay, let's all go. And we all left, and we never watched, the thing just disappeared into the sky, and the helicopter, the last time I saw it, it wasn't even halfway to trying to catch this thing. The next day, my grandfather lives next door. The very next day, I went over his house. We went over like every day. And so when I walked in, he said that he had saw the whole thing too. So he said for him, he went to bed at like 8 o'clock. He said he was in bed trying to go to sleep, trying to fall asleep when he heard the helicopter. He got out of bed, and his window to his bedroom he was closer to the situation than we were. Like he was not maybe 15, 20 yards closer than we were. So he said he watched the whole thing from his second floor window. And he said, he was like, what in Sam heck is going on? The helicopter chasing that thing all over hell and creation and blah, blah, blah. He has that kind of farmer way of talking. But he told me the next day that he saw it too. And he wanted to know if I saw it. That's the whole reason he told me. He was like, did you see it? And I was like, yeah, I saw it. And then he said, send your father over here. He said, when you go over home, send your father over here. I want to talk to him. And I was like, okay. I suspect, and I don't know this, but I suspect that he probably talked to my dad about it too. So it was the four of us. It was me, my brother, my dad, and then my grandfather that all saw this Black Hawk try to intercept this Tic Tac in whenever it was, 1997, something like that.
Wow. In the year 2000, you came into a contact with a being that you call the Hooded One. What happened?
So that one was more strange than I'm used to. Um, that one, so I don't even know how to describe it. I've had a few instances. My girlfriend's had a few instances where there's like a big flash of light, and then usually you just kind of black out, or every once in a while there'd be a flash of light. You'll see a gray alien or whatever. I don't really know what that is, but I don't know if they're, I don't know. I don't know how to describe it. But anyway, I guess it was I was 11, so it was like 2001, 2002, somewhere, maybe it was the summer of 2002. I went to my uncle's house, and he lives on a farm, or he used to live on a farm in Pittsville, Maryland, and his wife had just had a baby, so she has like a several-month-old baby, her first child, and technically they were my cousins, but they were much older, so we called them our aunt and uncle, but they were actually our second cousins. This is my father's, oh no, excuse me, my father's nephew, his sister's son. And so, but anyway, we called him our uncle and aunt. I went over there, and my cousin, who's a male, drives a big rig truck. He had a trucking business at the time. And so he wanted somebody there to like look out for his wife while he was gone. Um, I don't really know why, they never told me, but I was there a few nights, and I was watching TV that had this big screen TV and a couch in the living room, and I kept feeling like I was being watched. I used to wear glasses, so I could see in the reflection in my glasses. You know how you have like that little mirror kind of in the corner of your glasses where you can look behind you. I kept seeing this white kind of shape pop up in the window behind me, and I would try to turn back and look at it, and it would duck real fast. And I don't know why, but I thought maybe it was an animal or something. So the one time I don't know why I did this, but I saw it pop its head up, and so I like kind of looked over, and I just spun around, and I just caught it as it ducked below the window. So it was a head of something. At that time, I didn't know what it was because it moved, it ducked down. So it was like a blur of kind of white and gray kind of blur. So I ran over to the kitchen door and ripped the door open. And I was poking my head out trying to see if I could see it around that side of the house. And then all of a sudden, I got this terrible feeling like I just made myself vulnerable. Like I unlocked and opened the door. I have no idea what it was. So I just slammed the door and locked it. And then I eventually was able to go to sleep. I was eventually able to fall asleep. That happened like maybe 2 or 3 nights in a row. And I never told anybody because I never got a good look at what it was. It was just like I was like, maybe it's a deer or something. I don't know. Anyway, on like probably like the fourth night, my uncle was about to leave to go to work for a few weeks. And I was so freaked out by what was happening that was up in my aunt and uncle's second floor loft. And I was sitting on the balcony. And about 100 yards away or so, there's a big flat grassy area it's not on their property. It's just outside their property. And I saw this blue, white, almost purple orb. Like it was like if you go into the bathroom, you turn the light on, and then the light just pops. This thing just kind of boom popped and lit up the entire area, all the trees for just like a second, the whole area, like daytime. And so I'm looking and I'm like, what was that? And I thought like, well, maybe somebody lives over there that I don't know about. Maybe somebody has a car or whatever. And as I'm looking over there trying to figure out what I just saw, I see this white figure coming down the driveway. So it came around, like the light happened right here, and it came around these trees and started down the driveway. And it was too far away. I couldn't tell what it was. So I was like, oh, maybe it's a deer. It's kind of white, palish color. And then as it got closer, I was like, that's a pretty big deer. And then I was like, once it got maybe 60 yards away, I was like, that's not a deer at all. This thing looked like it was going to go to the front door. It made a 45-degree angled turn, walked over to the sidewalk that runs right underneath the balcony. So I'm on the second floor. It's the sidewalk's like I could spit on it. It's straight below me. It made another kind of 45-degree turn and was walking down the balcony, or excuse me, walking down the sidewalk. It got like right underneath me. It made another 90-degree turn, like it abrupt faced, and then it lifted its arms up and looked in. It leaned in and looked in the glass door of the kitchen. That same door that I ripped open and looked outside, that same glass door. And the moment it did that, it leaned in. So when it lifted its hands up, all right, I should go back. This thing looked like a hooded, robed figure. The robe came down so far you couldn't see the hands. The robe went down so far to the ground that you couldn't see the feet really. So I didn't know if it was like hovering or if it was, the way the robe was, where it was walking and you just couldn't tell. And then where the face was, if you take like a flashlight and put it in your mouth, or like one of those minor lights on your head, so it's got this hood on, and then it's got this red light where you can't make out the face. You don't know what it is. So as it's approaching me, somebody was like, why didn't you yell or scream? Or so I literally was like, I don't know what I'm looking at. It was probably 4 foot tall. So anyway, it walks up, it makes that 180, and it leans in. And when it lifted its arms up, the sleeves fell to the elbow, and I could see its hands. And what stood out was they were extremely skinny. They didn't have the right number of fingers. I don't know if it had 3 fingers or 4, but I could tell it didn't have 5. And the fingers were probably twice as long as they should be. So when it did this, like if you do this, its fingers reached all the way up to the top of its head almost, like where the fingers were like up here. That's how long they were. So it did that, and then it almost was able to touch its fingers together above its head, right? So I watched it lean in, and I just all of a sudden got this terrible feeling, like it was looking inside the house. Whatever that light was, it just came up and put it into the window of the house. And I got this horrible feeling like it was about to do something bad, like it was up to no good. So I just burst in and started screaming for my aunt and uncle. My uncle grabbed his gun, and apparently there was some other stuff going on during this time period. There were some strange things happening. I didn't know anything. Nobody told me. So he ran outside with his gun and a flashlight. He said he didn't see anything. And then I ended up, it freaked me out so bad. I slept on the floor of their bedroom. I was like probably like 11 years old. And I haven't slept with my mommy and daddy in a long time. And I literally slept on the floor of their bedroom. It freaked me out that bad. Um, my uncle left the next day. And the next night, the phone rang at like 2 in the morning, right? And I go over and answer it. And I'm like, hello. And it's this voice, this deep, like, almost like, I think everybody, I don't think these are demons, by the way. I don't think that's what's going on. I've spent too much time with them to believe that there's some sort of spiritual demon or something like that. I don't think demons need ships. I don't think they need medical supplies. I might not know exactly what's going on, but I want to make it clear. I think every single person in the world that heard this would say it was a demonic voice. It was a deep, grizzled male voice, and it was speaking a language that I could only describe as like Sumerian, like Middle East, some sort of Middle Eastern, like almost like an ancient dialect or an ancient language or something. So it was speaking this language, and then the strangest thing is that I could hear him just fine, but I got this feeling that if I just tried hard enough, I could understand exactly what he was saying. So I'm like listening as intently as I can, trying to, because I don't even know how to describe it to you, but it's like when it's literally like when you forget a word, it's on the tip of your tongue, and you're like, if I just think about it, it'll come to me. It was like one of those where I was like, if I just focus, I'll know what he's saying. I'll know I know this language, and I can just, if I just focus, I'll know exactly what he's trying to tell me. And so I'm listening intently, and my aunt heard the phone call. She thought it was her husband. Something bad happened, while he was on the road or whatever. So she came down, came up behind me, and was like, "Is that Mike?" And then I turned to her. I was like, "No." And then she was like, "Well, who is it?" And I just went like this. Because I was trying to understand this man, right? And she was like, "What do you mean you don't?" And she took it, and she just went, "Hello." And she listened for a second, and her eyes just bugged out. She just went, boom, hung up the phone. And then she was like, quick, grab the phone. So she just slammed it down and hang up. And then she was like, quick, grab the phone. And I was like, okay. So she ran upstairs. She grabbed a gun. She grabbed the baby. So the baby was like in a crib. So she grabbed the gun and the baby. She ran downstairs. She grabbed me. She checked the front door to make sure it was locked. She checked the top bolt lock and she checked the bottom lock to make sure they were locked. And then she was like, quick, take the baby. And she gave me this brand new baby. Like I'm a boy, but I spent some time with kids. She gave me like a straight up sleeping infant baby, right? Like probably just weeks old, maybe 2 months, I think. Right. And she snatches the phone. She's got a gun and a phone. She dials 911. She yanks me into this room. She pushes me down to the ground. She gets underneath they had a wraparound desk. That was like their office for their business. And so they had this wraparound desk. She gets down. She puts her legs out. She puts one arm with this gun up against my stomach and yanks me in, pulls me in like you're spooning, but we were sitting on our butts, like you in gym class when they make you stretch your legs open. So she's got her legs cocked. I'm in between, and then I'm holding the baby, and she lifted that gun next to my face, like right in my ear, and just pointed at the door of the office. And then she called 911 with the other phone, and I was close enough to the phone that I could hear almost everything that they said. And she said something to the effect of, somebody's watching me. I think somebody's here. I think they're watching me. I'm afraid they're going to come inside. She said something about I just had a baby, something like that. So the dispatcher was like, "Don't worry, we're sending somebody. Everything's going to be okay." Right. So she heard somebody at the front door, which is like, it's like the office door, the front door is like feet away, right? So I heard it too, by the way. Something came up to the front door, like a person. And she goes, like, and then she was like, I think they're here. And then the dispatcher said, don't worry. The police are close. They're almost there. Just hold on. It's going to be okay. And we heard the front door unlock and open. Front door opens, front door shuts. Whatever this is walks right in front of the door, right? The gun she has is a 50 caliber Magnum handgun. So it's really heavy. And so at this point, she has begun to shake, but she wouldn't drop the gun. She just leveled it at the door. And I remember thinking, I'm going to be deaf. Like, I remember in that moment, I was like, if this person, like whoever it was, if they open this door, I'm going to be deaf for the rest of my life. Like, that was the thought. Like I knew she would unload, like whoever touched that, if that door moved even an inch, it was over. Like, she was ready. And whoever it was, whatever it was, walked right past the door into the kitchen. And then the footsteps kind of faded into that side of the house where you couldn't hear them anymore. Within 30 seconds, 40 seconds of whoever it was walking, you hear a bang, and then you hear a man calling her name. And you hear it run up to the front door, and you hear him start banging. And she goes, quick, go, go. And she kind of propped me up. And we ran out the office door. And right as we went to go open the front door, a man had stuck his gun inside the doorway and a flashlight. And my aunt had ripped the door wide open. And I'm surprised he didn't accidentally shoot her, because I think he was surprised by her ripping the door open. But she said, was that unlocked? Was that unlocked? And he was like, what? He freaked out. He's like, what? She was like, was that unlocked? And he was like, yes. And she said, there's somebody inside the house. And he went, go. And we ran over. And at that point, 2 other police cars pulled in. They all kind of filed out. One of the cops grabbed her, started talking to her. A female cop grabbed me. She took the baby back, right? And they were like, hey, maybe put the gun down. so she puts the gun down on the hood of the car. And they go and they search the house. They don't find anything anywhere. They search the whole house. They don't find anything. And I left the next day. It freaked me out so bad that the next day I went home early. And then she said she was going to go to her parents' house for a few days. And then I went home. It freaked me out so bad. And they wouldn't really talk to me about any of it. Months later, it was Thanksgiving, I think. My aunt came over for Thanksgiving, and she said, well, they're really lucky you were there and you answered the phone. I was like, why? I didn't do anything. I couldn't have felt more useless in my life, to be honest with you. I didn't know what was going on. I wasn't afraid at all. I was just listening to this man, so I didn't feel like I was very useful at all. In fact, I felt like a coward leaving, because I think if they had talked to me, maybe I would have stayed. But I was like, I don't know what's going on here, and I just want to go home. And I was like 11, but I felt really bad about it later on. Like, my whole life, I felt bad about it. Like, I should have stayed. But it freaked me out, and they wouldn't talk to me about it. Like, they just wouldn't tell me what was going on. I found out when my aunt came for Thanksgiving. She was like, it's lucky you were there. And a man answered the phone, and I was like, why? And she told me that they had suspected that maybe one of his disgruntled employees was maybe pulling some sort of pranks or something, like trying to get revenge for him firing him or something. And I was like, why would you say that? And she said, well, before you got there, all this strange stuff was going on. And they didn't know if somebody was like breaking into their house, and, they had some strange things happen, like these strange phone calls and stuff. and they thought it was maybe somebody that was threatening them. And I remember afterwards, I was like, I don't think that the person that called us threatened us. I think they saved us. Like, I the best way I could describe it is, if they didn't call us, we would have both been asleep. She would have been asleep upstairs. I would have been asleep downstairs. That front door would have opened up, and whoever this was, um, whatever intentions they had, they would have been free to do whatever they wanted. And so she said to the 911 dispatcher, she said, "I think somebody's here. I think they're going to come inside," or something like that. And I was wondering if the person on the phone had told her that somebody was watching her and that they were going to come for her. This is what it sounded like, right? Kind of like one of those things where somebody's almost it's, you don't know if they're talking in third person about themselves or if they're warning you about somebody else. But my aunt was like, "It's a good thing you were there," um, and I was like, "Why? I don't get that at all." And then my aunt told me one thing that I always remember. She said they called the police, or excuse me, the police called the cell phone company, the phone company, and there was no recorded phone call incoming or outgoing before the 911 call. So there was no phone call at all to anybody. So now you have a mysterious radio signal. You have a person speaking completely I think it was Sumerian. Like, at first, like when I was younger, I was like, "Oh, maybe this is like Farsi or something like that." But then later on, I saw this historian attempting to recreate Sumerian, um, what it sounded like based on because they don't know exactly what it sounded like, but what they do know is what the languages that morphed into sound like. So basically, there were some historians that, and I was like, I think this is what it was like. This is what it sounded like to me, like much more so than like Farsi or Aramaic or anything. But anyway, not that it matters. But to me, I think it was a warning. I think they helped us. Like, whoever called us saved us. Uh, Otherwise, if you were trying to hurt somebody, you just did the dumbest thing you could possibly do. You warned them with enough time to arm themselves, call the police, and find a place to hide where you couldn't get to them, in enough time. And I will say this: there were two ways the person could have went out the other side of the house. Um, and because the police kind of ripped the house up, we don't know if maybe they just walked. Maybe they saw because when the cops came in, their lights are right there on that side of the house. So we were wondering if maybe they entered the house and they might have saw the lights from the cop car and they just split, and they just went straight out the other side, because that side of the house is where the cops came in at. So if you wanted to run away, you couldn't run towards the cops. You had to run the other way. But yeah, that was really strange, and that all happened. It was like maybe a 4 or 5 day period, and the only thing that I saw, like really well, 8 foot away, was that 4 foot tall creature with the red kind of light. It almost like it was wearing a headlamp, or maybe it had like a flashlight in its mouth or something like that. But yeah, it was pretty crazy encounter.
Amazing one too. Wow. Back in the year 2000, you had a mass sighting and an abduction at a drive-in movie.
Yeah. So, all right. So, um, that was all right. So, long story, but um, the drive-in is called the Diamond State Drive-In in Felton, Delaware. It was like the only drive-in, I think, in the entire state at the time, because basically all the drive-ins failed in like the 1980s, pretty much. So a bunch of them played porn, and this one played porn for a while. So it was like a porn drive-in for a while, like risque movies and stuff. Um, anyway, some guy bought it and was like, he wanted to bring it back for like nostalgia, like the 1960s, 1970s crowd. maybe bring their kids and grandkids kind of thing and see if he could turn a profit. So he had bought this place, I think in like 96 or 97, something like that. And he was partially successful. He was getting okay crowds. Um, anyway, so my dad had grown up with the drive-in. It used to be a different drive-in. It closed, it reopened. And so my dad was like, I'm going to take, he used to take my mom there. And then, when they were dating, and then now, it closed down for a while. And so now he wants to take his kids. So it's a drive. It's like a 45-minute or so drive away upstate from where we grew up. But it had a special. The reason he took us is because it had a what they call from dusk till dawn movie night. So they'd play 3 movies. They would start at dusk, and they'd have a 45-minute intermission, and they'd play 3 full movies. And then you'd leave just as like the sun was coming up. The last movie would end. So we get there. We're in this massive passenger van, 15-passenger van. My older brother's the only one that wasn't there because he had turned 13, and he was at that age. My dad was like, you can do whatever you want. Stay, go. I don't care. I asked to stay home, and he was like, nope, you two will fight, and it'll be a pain in my butt. You're coming with me. So I was the oldest kid with my dad. It was my father, my stepmother, 4 stepbrothers, my younger brother, and then my one cousin. And they were all pretty young, like 5, 6, 7. And then there was like, I was 11, and then there was 10 and 9. So what ended up happening is we watched the first movie. I had to pee. I was holding it in because I didn't want to miss the movie. But because it was a van and we couldn't see, there's too many people. So the row in front of you blocks the people behind you. So we took out chairs, and like my dad and stepmom watched, my younger brother watched, and then the row behind them watched inside the van. Everybody else kind of sat outside on a blanket or whatever. And I laid on top the van. So as soon as the credits started rolling, I jumped down, ran to the bathroom. This was the busiest night I'd ever been there. Even when I was younger, like this is the busiest I'd ever seen it. There was probably at least 100 cars when the movie started. So I run over to the bathroom, and there's like easily 30 people in front of me, like easily. So I'm like holding it. And I'm like, okay, I'm not going to make it. And like, I'm going to pee my pants. So once I got maybe, I don't know how many people, maybe 10 or so from being able to go inside the restroom, I was like, I'm not going to make it. And these 2 guys came up. They went behind the building. They peed on the back of the building, and then they walked away. And I was like, I'm going to have to do that, or I'm going to pee my pants. My dad is kind of a hard kind of nosed guy. If you pee your pants and you are 11 years old, you're getting a belt in front of everybody. Like, it's just how it is. But also, if he catches you peeing on somebody's private property, you're also getting a belt in front of everybody. So my grandfather was a farmer, and the way he taught us is he was like, if you absolutely have to pee on somebody's property, you walk as far away from people as you can, you find a tree, you go back there, you make sure nobody sees you, you pee, and then you come back. So I'm like, I'm not going to make it. It's taking too long. I'm just going to walk. There's a big field behind the drive-in, right? So the drive-in faces this way, the field's that way. I went around the building and just started walking. It's several hundred yards long, and then there's a tree line. And I'm walking as fast as I could. I looked backwards a few times to make sure nobody saw me. I didn't want anybody to see me go and pee out there and getting in trouble, especially my dad. That's what I was really worried about, if my dad saw me. So I kept looking back as I made it 50 yards, and I made sure nobody saw me. And anyway, when I got maybe 20 yards away from the woods, I realized I wasn't going to make it. Like I wasn't even going to make it to the woods. So I was like, I'm done. I turned back, and the credits take a long time to roll. The credits had just finished, and they put up a 45-minute intermission sign. So it just says like 45 minutes till the show starts or whatever. I turned back. nobody's there. Nobody saw me. I turn back and I start peeing in the field, right in the middle of this grass field. And I heard something. I didn't know what it was. It just sounded like two steps, like two solid steps in the grass. When I looked up, about 6, 7 feet in front of me is a gray alien. My first thought was maybe it was a deer, because if you've ever walked through a field and you're scared of deer, they bed down, and then so they'll jump up and then they'll take off. So I heard the noise and I wasn't scared at all. I was like, oh, it's probably a deer. When I looked up to see what it was this creature, and it was kind of standing half turned, one arm out, one kind of almost like that famous Bigfoot photograph where Bigfoot's kind of half. It was doing one of those kind of half stance, and it was slightly, his knees were slightly bent, slightly squatted. Probably about my height, maybe a little bit taller than me at the time. Maybe about my height, maybe not quite taller than me, but about my height. And then it immediately, I'm peeing, like I'm physically peeing. So I started backing up, and I'm peeing, and I'm panicking, and I'm literally like, oh my God, what, and it did the whole, do not be afraid. We mean you no harm. You need to come with me now. And then you argue with it a little bit. The next thing I know, it's like I black out, and then I kind of I don't want to say I come to, it's like I skip forward a minute. It's like my memory starts getting choppy, but it's like I'm physically peeing, like I can feel myself. And I was a kid, so you know how kids hold their privates with two hands, like even though I was 11 years old, like they still do stupid stuff like that. So I go from talking to this thing, or it was talking to me, to now I'm right behind it, following it into the woods. And then I remember it's like I skipped forward like just a minute or something. Like I don't know what happened in that minute. I don't know if I peed on myself, if I stopped peeing. I don't know. I don't know how it got me to follow it. I just literally, it's like I skipped forward 1 minute, and now I'm just walking behind it. And it walks into the woods. It walks through maybe 20 yards of woods. It wasn't even that much, into a clearing. And then there's a craft sitting there, door open, stairs, legs. It seemed, I don't know. I think it might have been a disc, but I honestly don't know if it was a tube shape or a disc. And then as I went up the stairs into the arched doorway, I literally just blacked out. And I don't remember what it looked like inside or anything like that. I literally just followed this thing up the stairs, and then I blacked out right as I was kind of going in. It was very cylindrical looking, almost kind of tapered at the ends, almost a little sharp at the ends, which is why I wonder if it was a disc, because it was so tapered on the ends. But it doesn't really matter. So I went in this thing, black out, and when I came to, I didn't know where I was. So I woke up and I was running, like panicked running. And I'm like, I gotta get away, I gotta get away. They're gonna take me, they're gonna take me. And then I was like, where am I? Like I didn't know where I was. I was running through the woods, and I got really scared I was gonna run into a tree, like face first into a tree. And then all of a sudden, as I'm panicking, and I'm, like I came to mid run, I'm already running. So all of a sudden I broke out into a field, and I could see the lights off in the distance. And it was people's car lights and stuff like that from the theater, which was like a few hundred yards away. So I started running as fast as I could. I pointed my body at my dad's. My dad had the biggest vehicle. He parked all the way in the back near the concession stand, but I could still see his vehicle above everybody else's. Right, it was like poking out. So I just pointed my body at his vehicle and ran, and I slammed into a pole. There used to be a 1950s drive-in there, where they had the concrete poles and the voice boxes. And when they got the AM transmitter receiver, right, they just left it over there. All they did was move the drive-in from here to here. And they just moved the screen over. That's all they did. So they had all these abandoned poles out there. I didn't know that. And I ran right into one, and it like smashed me. I almost got really hurt. I'm surprised I didn't get super hurt. But I hit it so hard that I almost fell down. I just barely was able to catch myself and keep running. And it was because of that, hitting that pole, that I decided, because I was running, it's hard to explain, but the lights of the theater was glinting off. So I hit the pole, I didn't see it. And now I'm starting to look, I don't want to stop running. I'm so scared. But I realize that there's a slight glint off the top of these poles. And I see what orientation they're in. I can see that they're running in these lines, right? And I realized that I was running diagonal across the lines. That's why I ran into one. And if I just ran horizontal, I wouldn't run into anymore. So I turned my body and just ran straight across these poles like this down the row. And I don't know why I did this. I was so scared that I was just like, I'm gonna just hide in the first vehicle I get to. And it was this guy in this kind of maroon minivan. So when I ran up to the front door, he was sitting there, so I knew I couldn't jump in with him. So I ran around to the side and I yanked the side door open, and it was this guy, his wife, and his daughter was sitting Indian style on the floor of the van. And so I ripped the door open and they all just screamed. He didn't see me run from the darkness into try to get in his van. So they just all panicked. Ah! And I don't know why, but I was so scared. I was like, they'll help me. They'll hide me. They'll help me hide, you know? So rip the door open, they scream, and it instantly stopped me. And I was like, oh, and they just start cussing me out, like just cussing me out. They're like, whose effing kid is this? And, blah, blah, blah. And so I'm just stuttering. I was like, I'm really sorry about that. Wrong car. And then I shut the door. I said, that's all I could think of is I just said wrong car. And I turned around and walked up and they cussed me out as I walked away. I was like, why did I do that? I don't know how to explain this to you, but them screaming shook me out. Whatever this fear induced thing where I was like almost like not in control of myself, where I was just doing it out of complete, fight or flight. It was like when they screamed, it kind of shook me where I was like, I don't know why I tried to hide with these people. It was just the first vehicle. So I walked to my dad's vehicle. He sees me. And at this point, I don't know how long I've been gone. I have no idea that I have been missing. I don't know anything. So I walk up, my dad goes, hey, there you are. He's like, where have you been? And I literally was thinking to myself, like, what just happened to me? And I'm trying to remember, like, how did I wake up, in the woods, like 500 yards away? Like, I blacked out right here and I woke up way over there. Like I woke up on the other side of the theater. So in like the woods was, the one I ran out of was here. And then where I blacked out was right here. And so my dad said it and I heard him, but I'm so engrossed in thought about what just happened to me that I didn't even respond to him. I just walked right past him. I went around the van and I jumped up on top of the van. As soon as I jumped up on top of the van, I see the movie and the people are talking and I have no idea what they're saying. If you ever walk in to a movie that's like almost over and the people are like, we must get the Galaxium, and there's like, Captain Stewart would never let it happen. You're like, what are they talking about? It doesn't make, none of the dialogue makes any sense. So there's a man and a woman talking, and I literally was like, I don't know what the heck they're talking. These people are just talking nonsense. Like I couldn't follow it. And then my dad goes, hey, what's that? So he reached up, he's in the driver's seat. He reaches up and does this to me and taps me on my arm. So I'm like kind of laid there like that. And he taps me. And I'm just trying to figure out like, what the heck is going on? How did I kept thinking like, how did I miss the start of the movie? I had 45 minutes, like I had 45-minute intermission. Like, how did I miss it? Maybe they started it early. I couldn't figure it out. So my dad taps me and goes, hey, what's that? And right above the trees I just ran out of, this object, lights up. It flies horizontally for maybe 3 minutes, very slowly, right? And this thing does a 90-degree turn in a fraction of a second and just shoots up into space. When this thing shoots straight up, all these people yell at the same time. And so you have to understand, it took 3 minutes. Like it took several minutes, at least maybe even 5 minutes. So we're watching this for a good amount of time. But I'm on top of the van looking up. I do not notice, but everybody stopped what they were doing all around me. Remember, we're the tallest vehicle and I'm on top of it. Every single human being that was awake, alert, like some of them got out of the cars, some of them were hanging out the windows. Everybody stopped what they were doing and was watching this thing. And all of a sudden, when it shot off, it just went and streaked into the sky, like not perfectly straight up, but 80 degrees into space. Perfectly clear night, like no clouds. This thing just went, and everybody went, whoa, like that. And so I'm watching this thing, and I'm like, what the heck is going on? Like, I can't, I blacked out, and I'm watching this thing, and I'm like, this is so crazy. And then all of a sudden, these people yell, and it shook me, like it startled me. I went, oh, wasn't expecting it. So I look around, and all these people are watching this thing, pointing, and they're going, "Oh my God, you see that? Yeah, you saw it. Oh my God!" And anyway, my dad goes, "Oh." So the movie ends, right? The credits come up. Like this thing shoots up, and then literally seconds later, the credit pops up. My dad goes, "Okay, time to get out of here." And my brothers that were still awake started crying, like whining, going, "Oh, you said we could stay and watch all three movies." And their mom starts yelling at them. My dad's like, "I want to get out of here." He's like, "I don't know what the heck that thing is. I want to get out of here." Right? He saw a UFO again, so he's like, "I'm ready. We need to go." My stepmother kind of argues with him. He yells at me. He's like, "Get down, right? Get down and get inside the van. We're leaving." I open the van door, get down. I see the time, 2:23 a.m. So I'm missing probably over 2 hours, maybe 2.5 hours. I'm missing the entire movie, and I'm missing the entire 45-minute intermission. So that was like the first time I realized how much time. Because for me, it was like when I walked up in the doorway, it's like I blinked and then I woke up, and I didn't know how much time had passed. Um, so my stepmother and father argue a bit. My stepmother's like, everything's fine, it's probably some military thing, whatever, who cares? You promised the kids. And my dad's like, okay, fine. Here's what we're gonna do. He said, you're gonna pick up all the chairs and blankets and trash, put it in the van. And he's like, and then if you guys fall asleep during the last movie, I'm driving straight home. And then so I started picking stuff up, and he was like, not you. He took his wallet out and he took out $20 and gave it to me. And he said, I want 2 hot dogs. He said, get some snacks, get a drink. Make sure you get me 2 hot dogs. So I start walking away from the van, and there was a group of people in front of the concession stand. That they were all like, did you see it? Yeah, I saw it. That was the one guy said he was in the Navy. The other guy said he was in the Air Force. He said he was active duty Air Force, actually. Like in fact, his exact words were, I've been in the Air Force my entire life. We do not have that capability. That was his exact words. So there was like 5 or so people. Then there was, when I saw these people, there were other people, groups of people here and there, right? And this old lady started going group to group, and she was yelling back. She was like a busybody. She's maybe 50, 60-ish. She went from one group to another group and yelled over, and she's like, they saw it too. They saw it too. And then she went over and she came over next to me and the group I was standing with, right? And she goes, did you guys see it? And she kind of like grabbed one guy's arm and kind of pulled her way into the circle, kind of like, hey, did you guys see it? She's like, what do you think it was? Oh my God. And they all said the same thing. It's the fastest thing. I've never seen anything that fast. I don't know what it is, whatever. And then she yelled back. She was like, they saw it too. This lady went to every person that was awake and was like, did you see it? And was yelling. I think it was her husband. She was yelling back to him, like, they saw it. And then, what do you think it is? And then I would say at that time, there was probably, I don't know, maybe like, I'm trying to think how many cars were there. It might have been 50 cars. I mean, it really might have been 50. I would say about half of them left, right? So the movie ends, credit rolls. I would say about half the cars, the lights turn on, the people gather their chairs and stuff. and it's 2:30 in the morning. They're not going to stay for the third movie. And it left maybe 20, 25 cars there, right? So I grabbed my dad's hot dogs. I gave it to him. I sat in the van. So it was my father, my stepmother, my oldest stepbrother, and my younger brother, and myself. So it was us five. The other kids were asleep. So it was my cousin and my two youngest stepbrothers were all asleep in the back of the van. So it was minimum of us five that saw this UFO. I'm the only one that I know of that saw it on the ground. And then at least 2 dozen more adults, and possibly more. Like, I mean, it could have been 100 people that saw it. When people ask me like how many people saw it, I always tell them that when I was standing there, there was this group, that group, that group, my family. If you add them all together, it's probably at least 2 dozen people that I physically saw them admit to it, say yes, I saw it. There's a fast. I've never seen anything like that before. I can't believe it. Whatever. As for the other people, I don't know if they fell asleep in their car. I don't know if they saw it, but I would suspect it was probably more than 24, 25 people. I'm guessing a lot more people saw it just by how loud everybody reacted. Like they all went, "Whoa!" Like, and then people were just yelling, "Oh my gosh!" I'm probably at least 2 dozen or more people saw it. And then I went in there. I eventually went to sleep. There was a 45-minute intermission before the last movie started. I don't even remember it starting. I just fell asleep. And then when I woke up the next morning, my dad had pulled in the driveway and was trying to get us all out of the car to go inside. It was probably like 6 in the morning, 5, 6 in the morning. He was just trying to usher us inside. But yeah.
What an amazing story. Wow. Um, Now we've got more to get into. Let me see. Back in 2002, you were roughly about the age of 14. You were abducted again, and this time you had witnesses.
Oh yeah. Well, I don't think they saw me get abducted, as far as I know. But they wait. Yeah, I think you're talking about those 4 people. So this is what happened. I was on the road. So all right, I was at my dad's house, the same field, the same place I grew up, the same place where the helicopter chased the UFO, all that stuff. So I skateboarded since I was like probably 11 years old or so. And a lot of times I would skateboard after dark. We didn't have any lights out there, so you had to be careful. But our road was kind of a slow kind of road where it was like not many people lived on it. There were a handful of people that lived at the end of the road that would drive like kind of fast. But I would skateboard out there even past dark until like basically until you start hurting yourself because you can't see what you're doing and you start making stupid mistakes. Um, so I was probably like 14. I skated till probably like 9:30 or something. It might have even been earlier than that. It might have been like 9 o'clock because this was probably March, April area. So I sat down on the steps. I was so hot and sweaty. My face is beet red. So I sat down on the front steps to cool off. I put my skateboard down and I was just like airing out. I've been skateboarding for probably like 4 or 5 hours or something. And all of a sudden, this object lights up as it's coming towards us. Like I don't think it was there and then it just turned on a light. It was more like when you see a shooting star come in, right? So this thing lights up. I see it light up in the sky. It comes down this perfect angle, flies straight across the highway, stops. Like, I mean, this thing is flying thousands of miles an hour, like just like a shooting star, just, and then it stopped maybe 10 feet off the ground, probably like 200 yards away. So it lands in the field, maybe 20 yards or more away from where that other craft was at one point. So it lands right in that corner of the field. So I jump up, and this thing, it had a red light on it. It came in almost a perfect 45-degree angle. It stopped 10 feet off the ground. It lowered itself. So it just went boom, boom. And then it turned off. It had lights on it, red lights. It turned them off. So now you can't, like, you can't see it. There's no lights in the field. So now it is just out there. It disappeared into the darkness. So anyway, these two cars were driving down the road. This thing had flown right in front of their cars, like just a few hundred feet off the ground. So I can only imagine what they saw. This thing flies straight across the street. So they immediately pull over. They both get out, and they're yelling at each other. They're closer than I am, by the way. They're probably, I don't know, 100 yards closer. So they're yelling at each other, kind of, "Oh my God, you see that? You guys see it too? Yeah, we saw it. Oh my gosh, what do you think it was?" They're all excited. Um, and so I jumped up and went inside to tell my dad. And my dad's inside. I yell at him like, "Hey, a UFO just like landed in the field. This thing." I don't think I called it a UFO. I was like, "This thing came out of the sky, landed in the field." My dad was like, he was like, "What are you talking about?" And I was like, "Come on, man, it's just landed in the field." My dad, like, is kind of a jokester, like kind of a smart aleck. So he was like, what do you even mean? Whatever. Like, just, and I was like, "It just landed in the field." He was like, "Oh, all right, I'm coming." And so he comes out. He comes up to the front door. He looks out the window. And as soon as he looks out the window, he sees the people. They had gotten out of their cars. The one guy popped his trunk, grabbed a flashlight, and they were trying to walk across the field to get into where the thing landed, right? So they're trying to go access the field. As soon as my dad sees that, he just bolts out the door, and he starts running towards these people kind of real fast, runs across the yard. He crosses the street. He didn't even look both ways. He crossed the street. He goes up into the ditch, and he starts going towards these people. As I'm kind of running up behind him, I'm watching these people crossing the field, and they're walking really funny. It reminded me of Scooby-Doo. Like, if you ever see when they walk real slow, and like when they're like sneaking, they're looking for a ghost or whatever. I watched them. They all got in a line together. The one of them had a flashlight, and as my dad is trying to beeline for them, I'm watching them walk, and they're going so slow. And I was like, "Why are they walking like that?" I literally was like, it was like Scooby Doo. Was the first thing that came to mind. My dad was like, "Stay here," and he snipped at me. He was like, "Stay there," and he goes over, and he starts yelling at these people, screaming at them, and he's like, "You can't go out there." And the one guy's like, "What?" And he was like, "You can't be out there." And he was like, he's like, "You don't understand. It landed in the field." And he was like, "I don't care what landed in the field." He's like, "You can't go out there." And he's like, "Sir, it came from the sky. It landed in the field." And he was like, it doesn't matter to me. You can't go out there." So they walked back just as slowly as they walked in. They probably only made it like 40 feet. I mean, it was pretty pitiful But they turn around and walk back. They walk to the grass that goes up on the edge of the field and walk towards my dad. And I guess they didn't want to get too close to him. I think he kind of threatened them, like they were freaked out by him. So they kind of kept 20 yards away from each other, just yelling at each other. And at one point, this woman spoke up and was like, "Sir, you don't understand. It came from the sky." And they're like, "Yeah, it came from the sky." And my dad was like, "I don't give a damn what it is." He said, he was like, "Sir, it landed in the field. We have to find out what it is. We got to go find out what it is." And he said, "That farmer just seeded his field. You can't go out there." He said, "You just tilled and seeded it." He's like, "You're going to ruin the crop, right? You can't walk out there. Just seeded it, right?" So that whole field was my grandfather's field. My grandfather did all the growing in that field and many others. And he did just till it and seed it. And we had this terrible rainstorm for like 2 days. And it turns out that's why they couldn't walk across the field. It was swamped. The whole field had gotten swamped. And so they were walking real funny because their feet were sinking in really bad. But I was far enough away. I honestly didn't know how wet the field was. It hadn't crossed my mind at all, because what happens is it rains real bad, it soaks up, the sun comes out, and the top gets dry looking. And so when I come home from school and it looked dry to me, there's a few wet spots here and there, but it mostly looked dry. I had no idea how wet it was. So anyway, he yells at him. He's like, "You can't go out there." They argue back. He says, "I got something for your butt." He starts cussing at him. He's like, "I'm calling the cops and I'm going to have you trespassed." And so they walk back and start talking to each other at the ends of their car. My dad is angry because he keeps telling them to leave, but they won't leave. And he kind of, it's hard to explain. My dad messed up. He kept saying the farmer's field, the farmer's field. If he had said, "That's my field, you can't be out there," I think they would have left. But I think it was the way he kept saying that's somebody else's property, that's the farmer's property, stuff like that. I think he messed up because they were like, "Well, who are you to, it's not your field," kind of thing. You know what I mean? If he would have just said, "This is mine, you need to leave," I think it would have been different. But they kept arguing with him because they were like, "You don't understand what just happened. This thing, it came out of the sky. We have to go find it. We have to go see what it was." Anyway, so he storms off. He gets mad, threatens to call the cops. He storms past me, and then they get in their cars and drive off. Right. So now I'm standing there at the end of the driveway alone. My dad storms in the front door. They slowly drive off. They like crept down the road. So they got in their cars and just drove the shoulder until they got to the end of the field, and then they finally drove off. So I think they were in the car probably trying to see if they could see anything. But anyway, I'm there. I'm at the end of the driveway, and I'm like, "What the heck just happened?" Like I was like, I should have never told him. For him, I was like, I don't know why he acted like that, right? Um, but anyway, I was like, well, whatever. And I went and sat down on the front step. And I looked across where it had landed, and I was like, I wonder what that thing was. Because you have to understand, I went inside. So I don't know if it flew away. I don't know. I don't even know what it was, really. I just know it was bigger than a car, right? That's all I know. It's bigger than a car. It moved thousands of miles an hour, and it stopped in a second. That's all I know. And so I sit down. I'm like, man, I wonder what that thing was. And all of a sudden, it lights back up. It turns on all the lights. It lifts off the ground several feet. It flies over maybe 40 yards or something. It drops back down to the ground. It turns off all its lights, and then it blinks 3 times. 1, 2, 3, and then it goes dark. Right. So I'm like, what the heck? And then a minute, maybe 2 minutes go by. It lights up. It lifts up. It flies over. It lands. It turns off. Blinks 3 times. Turns off. And it kept doing that. And so I watched it maybe 10, maybe 15 minutes. And what it looked like to me was, if you think about the field like a square, I think it landed here, and then it went here, 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 then it went here. It was like it was doing a grid search of the field. And as it was flying, it was almost like it would come a little bit closer and then it go this way. Then it come a little bit closer and go that way, like that. After like 15 minutes of watching this, maybe longer, because it would like maybe 2 or 3 minutes, it would turn off and you just wait, until it turned back on. So it's like pitch dark. You only got to see it for like maybe 10, 15 seconds. Light up, lift up, fly over here. Right. So there's more time when it was invisible than when it was visible, if that makes sense. After like 15 minutes, I was like, I gotta go tell my dad. Like he's such an idiot. He's got to see this, right? So I go inside and I'm like, hey, that thing is flying around the field. And he said, are those people still out there? I was like, they've been gone forever. They've been gone since you came inside. Like they're long gone. And he went, what'd you say? And I said, it's flying around the field. And he was like, it's probably nothing. And I was like, whatever. And he was like, all right, and he walked up to the front door and he looked out there and he said, probably just a car or something. And then he's like, walked away. And I was like, whatever. And I slammed the door. And I got mad. I was like, this 2 times, I should have never told him. right? My father really is, I don't blame him as much as an adult. He really is scared of UFOs. Like he's terrified. Like he was like, ah, it's probably nothing. And he played it, like dumbed it down. But he knows damn well that you don't have four people that are coming out there, four adults, your own son, they all saw the same. Like he knows he's just a scaredy cat. And whatever it is, he doesn't want anything to do with it. So he just kind of blew me off, and I was like, whatever. And I went back outside, and as soon as I went outside, I didn't see it, and I was like, oh, maybe it flew away, you know. And then all of a sudden, I see it light up again. It had moved from one corner of the field to a different corner, and it was doing the same kind of grid search over here. I watched it probably for another 10 minutes or so, and then all of a sudden, so it like I said, it lights up, it lifts up, it flies over here, lands, turns the light off, it blinks 3 times, and then it sits there in the dark. Well, this time it lights up, right? It looked like, I think it raised up too, but it lights up, and then it just starts throbbing, like whoom, 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 just growing, kind of coming back down like that. And so I'm watching, I'm like, what is it doing? It's sitting in the same spot doing this. So I'm looking at it, I'm like, man, what is that thing doing? Now all of a sudden I heard in my head a voice, like a male voice, like a deep male thunderous voice, and it just said, come to me. And then I just shot up and spun around because the only thing I could think in my head was that maybe somebody was playing a prank on me. So I shot around, and I could see there's 3 windows. There's the door window, there's the kitchen window, and then the dining room and the kitchen window. So I can see all 3 windows. There's nobody there. So then I look up at the roof because I'm like, maybe somebody's like on the roof messing with me. There's nobody there. And then I was like, I know what it was. Somebody snuck around the house and like kind of threw their voice or something behind me. And so I just took off running in a circle. I literally was like, somebody has to be playing a trick on me. So I ran around the house. There was nobody. I looked on the back of the roof. I looked behind the shed. I just ran circles around the house. There was nobody out there. When I got around the sorry, we're having a bad storm. So when I got around the house, I literally I stood there and I was like, I don't understand. Like, there's nowhere for anybody to hide. So I was like, I don't understand what just happened. I walked inside, walked right past my father. He was sitting in the living room, went into the bedroom, sat down, put my head in my hands, and I was like trying to understand what had just happened. I heard this voice in my head, but there was nobody there, right? That's what really freaked me out. Somebody asked me about telepathy, and they were like, well, what about telepathy or whatever? I was like, there's a freaking guy there that's talking to you. So even though it's in your head, you have a place for it that makes sense, right? I didn't think a craft could send you a voice in your head. In fact, I didn't even put 2 and 2 together until later. So like at this point, I'm just watching this thing fly around, and then I hear this in my head, and I think there's got to be someone messing with me. So anyway, I go back there. I'm sitting down. I'm confused. I'm just like, maybe I've lost my mind. Maybe I have a brain tumor, and I'm hallucinating. I'm literally trying to figure it out. And then all of a sudden, I was like, maybe this is what people mean when they say your mind's playing tricks on you. And the moment that I thought of that, I was like, that must be the answer. And then the very next thought I had was, I wonder if that thing's still flying around outside. Like that's how much I didn't equate them to each other. Was that my very next thought was like, I wonder if that thing's still out there. So I went past my dad. He did mumble something to me. I didn't hear what he said. I walked past him. I sat on the step. This thing lights up and it keeps doing the same thing it's doing, landing. I watch it for another few minutes. At this point, it's probably been out there for an hour doing whatever it's doing. Then all of a sudden, it did the same thing. It lights up, it starts throbbing, and then I black out. I got tunnel vision, and I just blacked out. When I woke up, I was probably at least 200 yards away. So I woke up just like when I blacked out when I was younger and woke up running, I woke up already running. And I was like, they're going to take me. They're going to take me. I got to get out of here. They're going to kidnap me. I got to run. And I was like, why are my legs so heavy? And I couldn't figure out why my legs were so heavy. It was like I couldn't run. And it was like I was running through quicksand, like in a cartoon or something. And I looked down. I could just barely see that every step I was taking, my legs were going all the way up to like almost my knee. I'm just trying to run as hard as I can. And I see a light off in the distance. Because I didn't know where I was. I was not sure where I was. I did not know what was going on. I had no idea how much time had passed. I just had this thought in my head that if I don't get out of here, they're going to take me and I need to run away. That's it. So I'm kind of like discovering what's going on as I'm running. So I realize I'm in a field. I realize that my feet are sinking in really bad and it's like mud because it's splashing up on my face. Every time I kick my leg back, I'm throwing mud up against the back of my head. Every time I kick my leg forward, I'm flicking mud off onto my face. So I'm just like running as hard as I humanly can. I see a light, and at first I didn't know what it was, and then I almost immediately realized it was my father's house, and I realized where I was from perspective alone, just from perspective. It was so dark out that one little light in the distance was just a white. You couldn't, you just didn't know what. So anyway, I run over, I jump across the ditch, I run inside. I was about to run in the front door with all this mud on me, and I was like, I'll get my butt whooped. So I stripped right there. I stuffed my muddy pants in my arm, kicked my shoes and socks off, run down. Well, I kicked my shoes off, not my socks, but run down the steps. When I opened the door, I see the time, and it was like one something. So if you remember, this kind of all started maybe 9:15 or something. That thing was out there no longer than an hour. So we're going from 10 o'clock pushing 1:30, like 1:20 at night. So when I saw the clock, I instantly realized something was wrong. Like hours had passed. I went to my room, I sat down, and I was like, what just happened to me? I took my socks off. My socks were covered in muddy water. Like my shoes got so swamped with muddy water that my socks just were completely soaked with brown water. Took my socks off, and I eventually fell asleep. The next day, I went out there, and there was only one set of footprints coming from the field to the house. So I literally stood out there and looked at it. I had to go somewhere, but all these are kind of long stories, but I had to go somewhere. So the next morning, I woke up, I showered, I just ruined my shoes, my only good pair of shoes. I had somewhere to be, so I went out to go where I was going, and that's when I noticed the footprints. Like the footprints my muddy sock prints went all the way to my bedroom. Where I kicked my shoes off outside, the muddy shoes were still sitting right there on the side of the doorstep. They were muddy footprints that went all the way up the driveway to the road. I followed the muddy footprints, stood on the road, and you could see for probably at least 100 and some yards where my footprints came from. There's a slight dip in the field where you can't really tell, like you kind of lose sight of them. But what you can tell is that there's only one set and they're coming this way. So I don't know how I got out there. So in my mind, I was like, well, maybe I walked around the back of the field. So I had to leave. So I went down the road and I came up the backside of the field. There's no footprints there either. So it's just from the center of that field towards the house, nothing anywhere else. And I couldn't figure that out. And I remember when I got to the backside of the field, I just stood there for like 5 minutes staring. And I was like, I don't know. I still don't understand how I ended up out there. Like what happened, like how I got from point A to point B. It was as if somebody picked me up, poked me up, and just dropped me in the field. That's the only thing I could think that made any sense. But I have no recollection whatsoever of, all I know is I was like, I gotta run. Gotta run. I gotta get away. I ruined my only good pair of shoes. Like, Um, Everybody tells me I'm when this stuff happens to you, you are just freaked out and you don't know what you're doing. I wish that I had told my friend, like, hey, I'm not coming. I've got bigger fish to fry or whatever. I wish I canceled my plans. I wish I had put some trash bags on my legs. And, somebody was like, why didn't you just if you already ruined your shoes, why don't you just put them on and go out there? I literally had somewhere to be. And I knew that this was strange, but it at no point in time was I like, oh, in 20 years, when I start telling people about this, I'm going to need some evidence. I was just confused, literally trying to understand what happened to me. There was no thought of like, you need to collect evidence, you need to prove it to people. People need to know that you blacked out for several hours. Like, you know, I literally, and even when I think about like, I just stopped and was just looking. And I was like, I couldn't wrap my head around what actually happened. I remember thinking like, there's got to be like an explanation for how this is possible. It didn't make any sense, and it reminded me of there was a story I heard of the same thing with like somebody walking in the snow where they tracked this guy, and then he walked out in the middle of a clearing, and then his footprints just stopped, and they were like, well, this doesn't make any sense. Like, where did he go? Um, but that's what it reminded me of immediately. And I didn't believe those stories. I thought those were like scary ghost stories and stuff. I didn't think they were real until I was looking at my own footprints and was like, I don't know how I got out there, but the only thing that makes sense is from the sky. That's the only thing I could think of is like they picked me up and just dropped me there. They were like, oh, this is close enough. And then I had to run home. Um, but yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Wow. Well, it's amazing that you still got all of this recall. And
No, I have a pretty good memory.
yeah.
Uh, I've always had a really good memory, actually. But yeah,
Uh, Now, regarding all of these abductions, and being healthy and young, do you believe that you might be a part of their hybrid program?
I people have asked me that. Maybe, but I don't. I have no reason to believe like I'm one of them. Somebody else said that to me. They were like, "You're probably one of them." In fact, that I think several people have said that to me over the years. I have no reason to believe that. To me, from what I've seen personally, they literally are taking stuff from me, like samples from me, injecting me with things, putting objects in me. If I was quote unquote one of them, I feel like that's a whole lot of research they're doing into one of their own. It just doesn't make sense to me. I think it's more likely that if there are hybrids, and I do believe it's very possible. In fact, I think that might be exactly what they're doing. It's called genetic recombination program, and that's what was said to me. I had that said to me not long ago. I didn't know what that. I didn't know what a genetic. I know what the word genetic means. I know what the word program means, but I didn't know what a genetic recombination program is. But it's effectively kind of like what they're doing with the mammoths, where they are taking in elephants, they're using mammoth DNA. They're giving it to the elephant so that way they can get another mammoth. And they're recombining these traits so that way they can get a woolly mammoth again. Um, and so I had this said to me not long ago. I don't even want to talk about that, but it wasn't even something in my consciousness. Like it wasn't something that I would always tell people that they're doing some sort of medical thing. Like that's what I always tell people. For some reason, they found something about me that they seem to either need or want, and they just keep coming back for it. They've taken semen multiple times, they've taken blood multiple times, they've injected me with these strange implants in multiple locations. It is clear and obvious to me that whatever it is that they're doing, whether it's a genetic recombination program or not, some people seem to be I guess you call them like an asset or a specimen or whatever you want to call it. I think it's more likely that I am a specimen that they're using for something else than I'm like one of them and I'm like a buddy of theirs or something. Um, they do control me. Um, when they tell me what to do and they're like, you have to get naked, I'm like, I don't want to, and I do it anyway. And they definitely control me. But I feel like if I was one of them, if I was their partner or something, I would be much more, I would be more helpful. And I fight with them. I try to throw pillows at them, cuss at them, try to stab them. I feel like I would be a really bad, ally, I guess. So in my mind, I think I'm just a specimen. That's the best way I can. Somebody said to me, your father and mother, you said they got abducted. And I was like, yeah, I think they did. Well, I know my father did, but I'm 99% sure my mother did as well. And they said, well, they might have messed with the baby a little bit, right? They might have done something to you. They might have had some kind of hand in your life. And I had not thought about that. um, but even if they did, I would argue that they didn't seem to do very much. They didn't seem to, if they, um, if they like, if I'm a hybrid, they didn't seem to give me a whole lot of hybrid stuff. I wouldn't even say I'm more advanced than anybody. I tend to think of myself as pretty much an average, with the exception of these strange encounters. I tend to think of myself as a fairly mundane, regular human being, not of any. I have medical problems. I have allergy problems. I have, you know, yeah. I just don't think I'm some sort of genetically modified, superior hybrid guy. You know what I mean? I just don't. If maybe they messed up, maybe they made a mistake. Um, if they did modify me, I believe that it was maybe for some sort of maybe empathy or telepathy. It's very possible that they are trying to kickstart that in human beings. That's one of the things that somebody else asked me, like, why do you think they're doing this? And I was like, I think they might be trying to help us get that switch turned on where people can communicate telepathically. Because I have heard story after story about people. There was one in particular where it's like five people went in the woods and they came across these creatures, and like I think two of them could understand them. They all could hear them telepathically, but two of them knew exactly what they were saying. The other three said it was like a gibberish or another language. If you remember earlier, I was talking about you on the phone, and I picked up the phone and I couldn't understand it. Right? It was just on the edge of like if I could just listen harder, I would understand everything this person's saying, but I couldn't understand it. I've heard lots of stories like that where you have multiple people and some people understand it really well, and the other people are like they're just it's like speaking French to me. I don't know what they're saying. Um, so if they did something to me, it might be that. That's my high suspicion is like they might be tweaking that to give us and maybe this is maybe maybe they're not recombining us with them. Maybe they're recombining them with us. Do you know what I mean? Or maybe it's both ways. I don't know.
Okay. Let me see. Before we finish off the interview, I'd like to get into two stories. Back in 2018, you came into contact with a 4 foot tall, hairy creature in your bedroom.
Oh yeah, there was actually two of them. Yeah, so that one. Let me think about this. So I think that was the night. There was like two or three nights that I had encounters back then. I think that night, what ended up happening was that was the night I threw the pillow. So that was the night I got tunnel vision. So all right, so I remember what happened. I was in bed watching TV, and I heard it sounded like something walked down the roof. So we were in a house that had a third story, second story, first story, and it's like an old kind of gothic house. and the third story roof kind of wraps around part of the house down to the second story, and then the second story does the same thing down to the first story. So it sounded like somebody was walking down the ramp above the bedroom like wall towards the bedroom window, like down from the third floor to the second floor, right outside the second floor window. And so I woke my girlfriend up and I told her, and I was like, "Hey, there's somebody outside." She was like, "There's nobody out there. It's probably nothing." She got up, went over at the window, and I was like, "Don't go over there. Like, you don't know what's gonna happen." The window's wide open, by the way. So I was like, "Don't go over there. You don't know what's gonna something can grab you, pull you out the window or something, you know?" So she was like, "I don't see anything out there. It's probably nothing. Go to bed. You know, maybe a stick blew up on the roof or something. You know, it's nothing." And I was like, "Okay." She falls back asleep. She falls asleep fast. It's just how it is. I have this terrible feeling I'm being watched, but I'm trying not to stare out the window. Like I don't know how to explain it, but when you think that you're being watched, it's really hard to like you almost have to like fight yourself not to engage because it's like I know something's out there you almost kind of hype yourself up. You're getting yourself really scared and worked up and stuff. So you try to kind of avoid it. So I was trying to just watch TV and pretend like whatever was outside that window wasn't outside that window. And I think that was the night that there was like a flash of light that went by. It might not have been that night. It might have just been I was trying to avoid the I wrote it down. I can't remember if that's the night with the light outside the window or not. I don't think it was. I think that was the other night when I saw the insect creature. But anyway, so I'm trying to avoid watching, look out the window. I'm trying to just watch TV, and then all of a sudden I got tunnel vision. And when I came to, I was propped up, and there were these two creatures doing a surgery to my girlfriend right next to me. In fact, I watched them. She had two pillows behind her head. The one lifted her head up, grabbed the pillow, kind of handed it almost to the other one, and laid it on her stomach. They laid her head back down and tilted it. And then the one pulled something out, like from down. I don't know if he had it in his waistband but it almost looked like a pen of some kind. And it looked like he was cutting into her scalp with this thing. So I start screaming at them. Like, I know that they can hear me telepathically, and I can certainly hear them. I don't know what they're saying to each other, but I can hear them communicating in their language to each other. And so I'm yelling at them telepathically. Like, I'm like, "Hey, leave her alone. She's a good person. Like, please don't hurt her," and all this stuff. They noticed me talking to them, right? The one turns to the other one, motions at me with his hand, and he's like, "You know, what do you want to do?" And the other one looked over at the other one. He grabbed a pillow with his hand, that the same one he laid on my girlfriend's stomach. He put it over and he just leaned it up against my face on its side. So it like I couldn't see what they were doing. I could still hear them talking to each other. I just have a pillow over my face. So, and this is really weird. Also, when he grabbed that pillow and got really close to my face, when he dropped the pillow, I could see his fingers, like really well detailed. These creatures were maybe 4 inch long, thick hair all over their head, all over their bodies. They were probably 4 foot tall. They both looked very similar to one another. Their hands were the only spot that wasn't covered in fur. And they had three extremely short, almost perfectly parallel fingers, like this. Like if you cut the tips of your fingers off parallel. And so they had these three extremely, maybe twice as thick as my fingers, super stubby fingers. They had fingernails, but their skin was almost completely black, like a gorilla or chimpanzee. They had a thumb. Like the gray aliens' hands don't look anything like this. Like this is like very human. You know, slightly different, but very human. And then all of a sudden, I was able to move again. They stopped talking, right? So they put this pillow up against me. They're still communicating. I can still hear them telepathically, however you want to describe it. And then they got quiet. I didn't know if they were there still or not. And then all of a sudden, I could move, and I just threw the pillow. Like I grabbed the pillow from my face and threw it across the room. I just start shaking my girlfriend, and I'm like, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" So she wakes up. And she goes, "What the heck's wrong with you?" "I'm fine. I was sleeping. I'm completely fine." what's your problem? Why, and I was like, oh my God, thank God you're okay. And she was like, I was asleep. Let me go back to sleep. And she rolls over, she goes back to sleep. And I was like, well, maybe I blacked out. Maybe I hallucinated it or something. So I eventually fall asleep, even though I'm scared now, freaked out. The next morning, I wake up. She's standing right there in my face, my girlfriend, and she wakes me up and she goes, "Hey," and I'm like, "What?" And she goes, "My head hurts," and then she's doing this. And I was like, "Take some Tylenol." And she was like, "No." She's like, I don't have a headache." She said, "It's like my head's bruised or something." And I was like, "What do you want me to do?" And she said, sometimes I tell you things just to tell you. And then she kind of stormed off. And I was like, I sat up. I was like, "Baby, I just woke up." I was like, I just opened my eyes. And so I went over and I was getting ready. And that day, she was getting a haircut. And she had planned it for women, you know, they don't just go get one on a whim usually. So that was her day. She was getting her hair, the side of her head shaved. So she goes in. I go to work. She goes to get her head shaved. She messages me and goes, "Oh my God, look at this!" And there's a picture, and I go, "Holy crap!" There is a 4 inch long uh, scar right behind her ear, like right behind her ear, from the right here, like exactly what I saw the night before, like exactly where they turn the head and they cut it right there. And she was like, "I'm gonna meet you at home." So I met her at home, and she was like, "Are you seeing this? Like look at this." And I was like, "Yeah." I didn't want to tell you, but some crazy stuff happened last night. And she tells me the story. She said, "I went in there. He was cutting my hair, and he goes, so what happened? Did you get in like an accident or something?" And she was like, "What are you talking about?" And he was like, "The scar. You have this massive scar on the side of your head." And she was like, "No, I don't." And he was like, yeah, you definitely do." And he turned her and showed her with the mirror. She said she got goosebumps over her whole body. It scared the heck out of her. So when she came home, I'm touching it. I'm taking a bunch of pictures of it. And then I was like, "We should go to the hospital." And she was like, "I don't want to know." She was like, "I don't." She said, "I don't know what they did to me. I don't know if they stuck something in there." She was like, "I do not want to know." And 3 or 4 days later, same thing happens. I wake up in the morning. She's standing right next to me, and she goes, "Look, look." And I was like, "What? What?" And she's like, "It's gone." And I immediately was like, "Oh my God, it's gone." It completely healed like it never happened. 3 or 4 days, something like that. She had this. I mean, if you ever see women with a C-section scar, right? Like an old C-section scar, like your mom had or your grandma had, those massive. That's what the side of her head looked like. And then she wakes up 3 days later. It's fine, like it never. I mean, literally, if it was not for the pictures, if it wasn't for the picture, like if we went to the doctor and said, "Hey, somebody cut her head open and whatever," they'd be like, "You're insane." I'd be like, "No, no, here, look at this." Like, if it was not for the photographs, you would never believe it. Like, you just wouldn't believe it. But yeah, that happened to her. And those two creatures were short, covered in fur. They had horizontal eyes. They had a very wide and shallow nose, like a very I don't know the word for it, but what is it called when your nose isn't stuck out very far, when it's very like shallow, I guess. But yeah, very square, very pressed in nose. Their eyes were very big and horizontal. You couldn't really make out their features because they had so much fur on their face that the only thing that really stood out was the eyes. I saw the eyes really well. I saw like the color of the fur really well. It was this reddish brown, and I saw the skin on their hands really well, and that's all I saw. But yeah, she still refuses to go to get it. I want her to go to get an X-ray on it, but she's like, "I don't care. I don't want to know. I just want to put it behind me." But
But still, yeah, an amazing contact. And so let's finish off the interview with this last one. In 2019, you came into contact with insectoids.
right, yeah. So I think that was the night with the light. So basically, we were living in the same room. We had moved to a different state, and we had a second floor bedroom. But this house had no air conditioning, so we constantly left the windows open. It had these big old windows. You had 10-foot roofs in the room. Like, I mean, this house was built for a doctor in the 1800s, so it's like this massive Gothic style house, right? Anyway, one of the nights she was asleep. Same thing. She was sleeping. I was watching TV, and think, I can't remember if I heard a sound. I might have heard something first, but either way, I saw something flash by the window. And I think it was like a white light, and it just shot by the window. And we're on the second floor, so I immediately was like, I woke her up, and I was like, something's outside, and she was like, it's probably nothing. It's probably nothing. You know, probably the wind, whatever. And then what happened after that? She ended up going back to sleep. Oh, and she was like, "Don't look out there." Like she was like, "You're working yourself up. Just watch TV. Whatever." She's like, "It's probably nothing." She said, "Maybe it's a car or something." I was like, outside the second floor window. Like, there's no way. I had this feeling I was being watched again, and then I just blacked out. I can't remember if I got tunnel vision that night or if I just lost consciousness. I think I just lost consciousness that night. I was watching TV and I literally just blacked out. When I regained consciousness, this creature was walking from the window. He was walking by like my girlfriend's side of the bed, and I'm just frozen there, just watching him walk with my eyes. He went around the TV and then he came up to my side. And this was probably a 6 foot tall. He had a very elongated head. He had two black eyes that looked like, I always tell people, if you take a dropper of water and put it on a piece of glass, like they really were, like if I elongated my head like that, and then you put my eyes like maybe right here, like bulging out. I mean, it looks very insectoid. His shoulder and his elbow and even his wrist look like they might be segmented, like like a cricket or something. He was very brown and black. Like his whole body was very like these very earthy colors, and it just reminded me of like if you took a human being and you gave it, like some bad superhero movie or something. If you like injected them with cricket radioactive DNA or something, it just looked like a big bug, like a 6 foot tall bug. I think his legs were backwards too. You know how like kind of kangaroo legs are, or like a dog, almost like a dog's legs, where it's like the one bone is elongated. It almost looks like they're back. They're not actually back, like an ostrich. Like they're not technically backwards. It's the elongation of that bone, but it's kind of what it looks like. I don't want to say that for sure because I was really trying to focus on his face when he walked around. It's just kind of how it is. Like when you go in the woods and there's an animal that scares you, you look it in the eyes. You're not trying to pay attention to, it's just how it is. So I'm really trying to look him in the face, but the way he walked, it really looked like maybe his legs were like an ostrich or something, like backward, like what we call backwards legs. Um, but yeah, just straight up insect. He got close to me, and then I blacked out. As soon as he got close, I don't know if he drugged me or whatever, but he got a few feet away from me, and I blacked out. When I came to the next time, oh, I should tell you, when I came to, I couldn't move, so I was probably from the neck down paralyzed. I couldn't move at all. Um, so he gets next to me and I black out. When I woke up the next time, I can move just fine. I was completely, totally mobile. So as soon as I come to, there's a disc hovering right outside the second floor window. It's got five orangish red lights on the rim of it, and they're staggered, like one after the other, like Charlie Brown's T-shirt. You know what I mean? They're staggered. So there's like three on the bottom and two on the top. And this thing is just maybe 6 feet away from my girlfriend. So I go to grab my phone to record it. And then I got this feeling that I wasn't going to have enough time. And I don't know why, but I had this feeling like if I tried to open my phone and it would fly away before I had a chance. And I have no idea why I felt that way. So I abandoned my phone, and I was just like, I just need somebody to believe me. Like, that was the only thing. My girlfriend, it's hard to explain. Like, at this time, she knew weird stuff was happening, but she hadn't got to the point where she was like, it's aliens. It was more like she had a UFO encounter, and she was like, maybe it's the government. She didn't believe in this stuff. Like, when I told you, like, I woke her up and told her that there was somebody outside, and she was like, "Oh, it's probably not. It's probably the wind." She wasn't. She knew weird stuff was happening, but she wasn't there yet to like go down the alien path or whatever. It was just like she would always say there has to be a logical explanation for this. Um, anyway, so I wake her, I start shaking her, and I just pointing and yelling, and I'm like, "Look, look, look!" So she wakes up and she goes, "Oh my God, what the F is that?" So she sits up, and this thing rotates 90 degrees. It stops on its edge, and then it just shoots straight up. Like, remember, the window's wide open. It's like 6 feet away from her. This thing makes no sonic boom. It makes no noise, no hum, no nothing. This thing is right outside the window. It rotated 90 degrees. It paused. It sat there for a little bit, and then it just shot up in a like because of the lights on the side of it, just streaked. And then my girlfriend goes, "Oh my God, oh my God, give me a piece of paper and a pencil." And she was like, "I have to draw it." She said, "If I fall asleep, I'm afraid I'll forget that this happened." She was like, "If I fall back asleep, I'm afraid I'll forget." So she drew it. She drew it when it was horizontal. She drew it when it was vertical. And then she didn't fall asleep. We stayed up. That was like the night that she really changed. That was the night she went from like, it's the wind, it's nothing, it's whatever, to, oh, she literally said that night after this happened, this thing flies off. She sat up with me for like 2 hours, and she said that night, she was like, it doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter if it's the government or if it's alien, whatever it is. She was like, when I go to sleep, UFOs are coming down here and messing with you. And she was like, that wasn't something I was like prepared to believe. Like, I didn't think that you were really having these encounters while I was asleep. But yeah, that's what happened that time.
That's an amazing story. My God. I'd like to get into your book briefly. Now, the title's called Violence Will Not Be Tolerated, an Alien Abduction Story. Now, this book can be purchased on Amazon, I believe?
Yeah, you can get it on Amazon, yeah.
Okay. So, thank you so much for coming on. It's been truly a pleasure and an honor. I really appreciate all the details you got into today.
Yeah, I appreciate it too.
Fun.
Thank you.
And to those watching, hope you enjoyed today's interview. I'm your host, Mr. Great. More interviews coming up, and I will see you guys next time. So, take care, everyone. Hello, everyone. This is Mr. Great, and thanks for watching today's episode. If you are an abductee, contactee, or experiencer, and you believe that your story could help others, please feel free to contact me through my YouTube channel email. When it comes to experiencers, the ET phenomena, and the future, remember, truth will out.